All right. Hello. Thank you so much, guys. Sorry we've had these technical difficulties over the last 45 minutes. And so we're just going to go ahead and take a second real quick to share the video. Paul will let me know once it's shared. Geez, technology. I think because I spend so much time on my computer on a daily basis that it frustrates me when they don't work. So thank you so much, everybody, for hanging in there and and watching this. So you got it going? All right. All right. So I have today with me a friend of mine, Marie, and we both, like I said in the other intro video, have gone through, lived through domestic abuse ourselves and are very close to it in our life and allowed ourselves, or I guess not allowed ourselves to be stuck in the situation and to really grow past it. And like I said before, there are so many people that have come to me within the last few weeks that have, raised their hand and reached out to me because they have themselves lived through, abuse and are having a hard time in their relationships moving forward in that. Trust, like how to move through being abused in the past and being able to move through that and then have a healthy relationship after that. Because trust is a big one when you've had someone in your life where that trust has really been broken. And when we're talking about abuse today, I'm not talking just about physical abuse. I'm talking about emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, whatever other kinds of abuse that you guys have lived through in the relationship. We just really want to give that support today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my friend Marie and kind of give you a background, and she can go ahead and give you a background of who she is and why she does what she does, and then we'll go ahead and get right into it.
Hello, yes, nice to be on. I am Marie, as she mentioned. How I got started in domestic violence awareness and prevention is through my personal life. I lost my mother when I was 12 years old to domestic violence, and then 14 years later, my sister was killed by her husband. And I carried that around for many years, thinking that surely I was next, because if it happened to my mother and it happened to my sister, then it would happen to me. But I happened to meet some people along the way that gave me a different perspective and helped me to look at it differently. But the thing that helped me move forward the most was getting involved with other people that had gone through similar experiences, either personally to themselves or their children or some other family member, and talking with them and sharing my story. I got involved with the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. But it took me years. For many years, I just carried it around with this burden of it's going to happen to me, and not trusting, being very untrusting. And that's a common characteristic of abuse victims or survivors or thrivers, is not trusting anyone, because it's a matter of power and control. And even if it's not you personally, and if it's someone in your family, it affects you very deeply. So I met someone who encouraged me to talk about it, to come and share, to get more involved. And that really helped me move forward. I started speaking about it, and then I got real deep into personal development, which is a really, really strong way that I was able to move myself forward. First of all, I would say the first step is being aware of where you are and what you're going through, and knowing that you're not alone. So I became aware of where I was and how deeply this was affecting me, and then decided that I didn't want to stay there. I wanted to move forward. And not only did I want to move forward, but I wanted to help other people move forward. So in my desire to help other people move forward, it was helping me move forward. It was helping me move past the trust issues and all of those types of things with the domestic violence.
Yeah, I mean, that's really beautiful, because I mean, as as someone who went through, for me personally, I went through 15 years of abuse in a relationship, in the relationship. And there was a lot of trust issues that really stemmed up. And the thing for me too, I also felt like I was so alone. I was so ashamed of what happened to me that what I personally did was I put up a front that everything was perfect. My life was perfect. Everything was perfect. And so there wasn't a lot of people, and there wasn't anybody in my life who really knew the extent of what I had gone through. I know that there was some people that probably had guessed it. And they knew that my partner he was very jealous. He was very controlling. That was evident. But they didn't really know the extent of the abuse and really the turmoil that I lived in every single day. And when I say that too, it was really funny because so many women are always like, oh, I could never imagine that happened to you. You're so confident. You're so put together. But for a while, that really was just a front. It was such a front. I hid it so well. So when I finally left the situation, I felt so alone because I was so ashamed to bring that to light.
Right. And that's very common. And another thing that's common is that people don't even realize that they're in an abusive relationship. And speaking with a lot of ladies, that was just their normal life. If you asked them if they were in an abusive relationship, they would tell you no, because that was what they were used to. That was their normal life. And for me, I definitely didn't call it that, because I felt like the abuse didn't necessarily happen to me personally, but by it happening to my close family members, it happened to me. And it affected me greatly. And another thing people don't realize, I meet people that perhaps they've had a coworker that was abused, and they don't realize that they still are affected by that deeply and should seek help for it. Because just because it's not personally, it affects you psychologically, it affects your children, it affects your friends, your other family members. It doesn't have to be you actually being physically beaten or verbally abused. So that's another thing.
Yeah, and that's one thing too, where when people who have not lived through that or don't really understand it, and then they'll say, I don't understand how these women keep on going back, and they keep on going in those situations. Again, sometimes they don't really realize that that's the situation that they're in, because it's not like we choose. Okay, I take that back. It's not like we consciously choose to be in a abusive relationship. It's just something that we've grown up with. People who are in like abusive situations usually grew up with abuse at home, and that's just part of our our lineage. It's not like it's something that happened. We grow up with these beliefs inside of us that we're not worthy, or that we're worthless, or we're this, and so we're going to attract that because it's literally the only thing that we know. And when we have something in our life that seems or that shows us that we do deserve more, we push it away because we don't feel worthy of it.
Exactly. And there's, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of shame associated with it. There's a lot of guilt associated with it. You begin to blame yourself for it, and you don't want to go out and tell people about it because, oh my gosh, I brought this on myself. How are they going to see me now? You think people are going to view you differently. It's somewhat of a stigma. So that's real common in abuse victims and survivors. They don't want to come out and say, this has happened to me, because you're embarrassed and you feel guilty and you're ashamed.
I'll remember when I finally left my ex, and finally had the courage to do that. And when I went to the courthouse to get a restraining order, and again, on the outside, it looked like everything is really good, right? So I go to the courthouse, and I didn't realize that when you go to court, that it's not like you're like in court by yourself. It was the only time I've been in court, so I never knew that. So there was other people in the courtroom with me, and when the judge called me up, I was like, oh my God, why are there other people in this courtroom with me? And so I was like, okay. And so she's asking me questions, and I was like, I couldn't say a word. I was frozen. I just sat there crying because I was so afraid to expose myself to all these other people. So I didn't say a word. And the judge just looked at me and she said, okay. And she signed the restraining order. And at 1:27 later that afternoon, he was served with that restraining order. But what was really funny about that was a year. So after a whole year of us being split up, people would ask, oh, where's he at? Blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh, he's at work. Oh, he couldn't make it today. Like when we went to like the kids' sporting events and things like that. I'd make up all these stories because I was so ashamed of, now I've got the label of being a single mom. I was so ashamed of that. I was so ashamed of like really exposing myself. Like that shame and that guilt, it was what I realized kept me in that relationship for so long, because I grew over it. I understood that this wasn't healthy, but I was so afraid of how people would perceive me that I just lied and hid this story for a year before I came out and actually said that I left him.
And many people do that. I didn't know that my sister was being abused until she was killed. I had absolutely no idea whatsoever. I think maybe a few other family members may have had an inkling here or there, but I had absolutely no idea. I didn't know anything about domestic violence or abuse. Even when my mother was killed years earlier, I didn't know about it. I'm 12. I'm not familiar with domestic violence. So that speaks to the importance of awareness and prevention, not sweeping it under the rug, not having it be we talk about other things, breast cancer and all of that, but we don't talk that much about domestic violence, because if it was talked about more, I think people would feel more comfortable and wouldn't be such a stigma. You would feel more comfortable telling someone this is what's happening. Like, you don't have to be ashamed of it. The person doing it should be ashamed, not the victim.
Right.
It's the other way around. But that's where a lot of work, I think, needs to be done. More conversation about it. This is good. More conversation about it, and starting at an early age with children, with the teenagers, with dating violence, with all of that, not sweeping it under the rug and hiding it. And it's not acceptable if the guy or whoever slaps you around a little bit. That doesn't mean he loves you. That's not acceptable. We need to make these things known more, I think.
Yeah, amen. What's so funny, like when I met my ex, I was 13. It was like right before my 14th birthday. And so anyways, he was really super jealous. And his jealousy, I thought, like I knew, I remember this moment so vividly. We're on the phone and he told me, like, it's the middle of the summer, right? And he told me I'm not allowed to wear shorts to school. And I was like, what? And I remember that being so odd. Like, I remember that being so odd, but then I was like, well, maybe he's jealous because he loves me. I confused, because that's what I thought. I didn't know. And I was so young. I was just a baby, but regardless, I mean, so many adult women and men do the same thing, misconfuse jealousy for love and caring when it's the exact opposite.
Right. Those are danger signs. Right. Controlling what you wear. Those are warning signs. Like this great honeymoon in the beginning, moving too quickly, giving you the world. If it seems too good to be true, it usually is. It's not.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it is.
Isolation.
Yeah, like it was that, like it's so funny because I remember that, and now because I remember that moment and so many other moments of my life, I like those are like, for me, I don't know if many of you guys have read the book The Alchemist. I love that book because every time you read the book, you read a different story. But the last time I read the book, I read it about, and what really pointed out to me was omens, which are those little signs from the universe that sometimes we want to misinterpret. We want to misinterpret it for something else, for what it really is. But they're lessons for us. They're like lessons for us to show up. And when and the reason why I remember that is because my soul that was a soul lesson for me to leave, but I didn't, and I listened to my ego there, and I pursued on, and that therefore it led me into the situation. Not that you know, but it was a lesson that I had to learn, unfortunately.
And we all do that because, first of all, you don't know for sure that that's a sign. And you were very young, but it even happens to women of all ages. You don't realize, oh gosh, I look so good. He doesn't want other people to be attracted to me or whatever. Or you make up some excuse for it because you enjoy the relationship. Then there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to note these particular signs, particularly more than one, and note and realize that those are warning signs. And sometimes they don't show them right away. So you may already be into the relationship for a little bit before these signs come up. So that's another reason why people don't just leave, because you're already you're invested in it.
Well, and I have to say too, like usually people who are abusers and people, I do want to also just state, this isn't just for like women, because men get abused too. They just don't like really voice it out as much. I had an ex that I was with where he was in a relationship where the woman abused him, and because he was, 6'2" stacked bodybuilder, nobody believed him that his woman was beating the shit out of him, and she was so good at being able to flip the story around. So in no way, shape, or form am I targeting this just to women, because I know as a woman, and we are just as good, maybe not as that physical abuse, but we're really good at dishing out that emotional abuse. So this is definitely for men and women. But like Angel just commented, 1 in 4 women deal with domestic abuse. And she also says men are more afraid to admit they're victims. I mean, it's so true. It's so true. And like you said, like being able to recognize like the warning signs. And the thing is, that's where I was going with that. Abusers are extremely good manipulators. Extremely good manipulators. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, because this is more of your topic. I've just lived through this, right? A lot of them have like addictions with like addiction issues, like alcoholism, drugs, things like that. And so they're really good at manipulating situations, and they're very good at lying when you don't know that they're lying. They're really good at being able to flip the script. And so, and in the beginning, like you said, they come off extremely charming, like extremely charming. And it's like, I watch a lot of documentaries and nature documentaries, and I use the analogy here of like that fish in the deep water, that you can't see, and it carries that like beautiful blue light, and you're just like, oh, I want the light, and then, they get you, right? That's what it's like. That's what it's like.
Yeah, we all want the light. Everybody
we all want the light.
Attention, the same things. And sometimes they overpower you with it, and you have to recognize that, wait a minute, this is too much too soon. Because that's also one of the signs. Like all of a sudden I'm going to sweep you away and sweep you off your feet, and we're going on these amazing vacations, and I'm doing all these wonderful things for you. If it's too much too soon, you might want to kind of stand back and take a look at it, because that's another one of the warning signs potentially.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, for me, that's one of the driving forces of why I created Soul Connect, was because that is so prevalent these days. Things move so quickly, like everything's about instant gratification. And when it comes to love, there's no such thing as instant gratification. Like the thing is like we're all, so many of us are starving for love and affection. We're just starving for it. In our media, in everything, we're taught that we're not good enough. We're not worthy enough. You have to have this. You have to have that. You have to have it now. You can't like wait for anything. And so we've carried those beliefs on into our relationships. And relationships take time to fester and to grow and to get to know someone. And so people like get engaged within 6 weeks of knowing someone. Paul and I have been together for 2 years, and shit, I still don't know I learn stuff about him every single day. Our relationship is constantly evolving. And within 6 weeks, there's no way I could say, yeah, I want to marry you, let alone 2 years from now. Or, we're together for 2 years. And, that hasn't come. I mean, we talk about our, that's definitely where we're heading, but we haven't made that decision yet to actually, put the ring on the finger, and that's the thing too. Why rush it? Why rush it?
Right. And question that if someone is in such a hurry to get married. In 6 weeks, they're like, oh gosh, let's get married. Question it. Like, wait a minute here. Let's take a little time, because statistics say at least a 6-month engagement is good. A minimum of 6 months.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, because within 6 months, like the first 3 months, people can really hide their shadows within that first 3 months. But then after that 3-month period, between that 3 and 6 month period, people really do start to unveil who they really are. You start to see things, because you're out of that initial like, oh my God phase, right? You really are starting to see things. You're starting to wake up. And so I really do agree with that. Like a very minimum of 6 months.
Exactly.
I remember when I was dating, there was a couple guys, like when we were like first date. This one guy, honestly, like we're dating, and I when you're dating a lot too, like don't jump down my throat on this, ladies, because it is kind of funny. But like I honestly didn't even like remember his name. Like I swear to God, like I didn't. And we were sitting at we were and right now I still can't remember his name, but we went out to like a light, like appetizers, and then we went to this bar afterward, and we're having this glass of wine, and he's like, literally, I'm looking for marriage, I want kids, I'm this and this. And in my head, I remember thinking, good God, I don't even know your name. How the hell do I know if I want to marry you? And it was like on a first date. And for me, that was a red flag. He's on a mission, he's looking for this, and there's no way I could meet those expectations. So I'm out. There's no way.
Right. And it's one thing to state your intentions when you're getting to know someone. Like if you're looking for a serious relationship and the other person just wants to date different people, you might want to kind of put that out there and not waste your time. But you don't want to put it out to the point like, I'm ready to get married next month. You just want to put it out there like, this is the type of relationship I'm looking for. So yeah. I think there's a
I love that you said that too, because that's one of my favorite words, is like, it is intention. When we do things with intention, like when we do things with intention, anything in life, we're able to see clearly what other people's intentions are. And when you're intentional, you're able to like really pick out what other people's intentions are. Like it's, and the thing too, ladies, I'm going to target this towards men for a second, is men wear their intentions. It's like right here, in smack dab in the middle of their chest. It's right there. But the thing is we as women want to interpret it as something else. Like, we can change this. He didn't really mean that. I feel like, because, yesterday, when we had sex, he was so into it and this and that, but, he didn't really mean that. Or no, his intentions are blatantly clear. Like they really are, if you choose to see it.
Right. And it's good to know yourself a little bit and just look inside what you're looking for. And if you have some things going on within you, work on those before you're even running out trying to get in a relationship. That helps a lot as far as the abuse and all of that.
That is so true. We have been taught and ingrained in our mind to be in this codependent relationship, like the language that's out there for relationships. I just want to find somebody that completes me. I'm so lonely, so I'm going to find somebody who's going to make me less lonely. Or, I'll get on the phone. I'm like, what do you guys want? What's your goals for over the next year? I always ask everybody who's a potential client, what are your goals for the next year? I just want to be happy. Well, guys, look, finding a partner isn't going to make you less lonely. Ask any married couple. Like, being married isn't going to make you less lonely. Being married isn't going to make you more happy. Okay, you've got to find that stuff clearly within yourself. And Angel says, was talking about teaching couples how to communicate properly. There's a lot of information hidden in the words that people say. And there's a ton, if you choose to listen to it again, of course, because the language that people use and how they communicate with you is will show their intentions very blatantly and very clear.
Definitely, especially one-on-one. It's a little hard to figure things out with all this texting, but a good one-on-one conversation really helps out a lot. More of that, I think, would help some of these relationships.
Oh my gosh, like big time. Like when I was dating and I was like, and I was going to pursue a relationship, I only pursued people who actually got on the phone and called me and didn't text me. Like, like how many of you guys already know I've asked this before on a live, like sent a text message and like autocorrect number one time, I swear to God, I wrote a text and I was writing the word chivalrous and autocorrect changed it to child ovaries. So autocorrect changes things, and if you miss something, it can change the complete context of the entire thing that you're trying to say, and once you push send, you can't get it back. You're like, oh my God, come back. You're like, oh gosh, it's out there, And sometimes I'll say things, and I'll say things like but then in a text, it doesn't roll over the same way I would have said it in person.
Right. You can't hear the tone in a text. You can't see the expression in a text.
I was listening to the well, first we were watching I was going to bring this up later. I was watching Say Yes to the Dress a couple weeks ago, and this girl, she is a famous singer. I forget what her name was. She sings that song X's and O's or whatever. She was on the Say Yes to the Dress, and he met this guy, and within 12 days, he quit his job, moved from Ireland, moved to the States, and asked her to marry him. And now they're on their way to get married. And so she's looking for a dress, and she's extremely emotional. Like, she's just crying for everything. And she finds a dress, and she's looking in the mirror. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe I found somebody who actually wants to marry me. And I'm like, oh God, that marriage is like doomed to fail.
Oh. She's finally worthy. Oh,
she's finally worthy. She's finally worthy.
That's sad.
Yeah, but the problem is that that's how so many of us think.
Right.
And because we think that, we put up with, people telling us, how dumb we are, how nobody ever is going to want us, how, what makes you think that you can do this, or, whatever it is else that they say. I remember a moment in time where my ex, woke me up in the middle of the night to fight about something. And he stood there and literally from head to toe, just like tore apart my body and tore apart tore me apart. Who's ever gonna want you? You've got those stretch marks. Everybody finds those disgusting. Stretch marks that I got from having those kids. That I gave him. And oh, you think just because you got a new haircut that people are gonna. He literally just like ripped on me. And it's like, and at that time I was in such a better place to just kind of reflect it. But there was a time and place when he said those things, and I thought those to be true myself.
Right. You start to believe it. That speaks to the trust that you mentioned earlier. And one of the things about trust is the most important is trusting yourself and knowing about loving yourself regardless of what relationship you have. Whether it comes or goes, you have that trust and that love for yourself. But the abuse is all about power and control. So if you can beat that person down, you have power and control over them. And that's what the whole thing is about.
Yeah, I mean, love isn't about, love shouldn't be about power and control. Love is growth. Love is learning. Love is healing. And in relationships, here's the deal too, that people don't realize, like the relationship mirror, once you master the relationship mirror, like you really start to get on the role of understanding your life. You have to understand how you project onto other people. And why I say that is we attract certain people in our life to reveal what's going on subconsciously with us so we can heal and grow it. But so many of us, we get so stuck in the situation. The thing is when you're with somebody who's abusing you, you're really just dating yourself. And I really want you to understand what I mean by that, because nobody on the planet can treat you any worse than you treat yourself. It's only when they treat you a little worse than you treat yourself is when you draw the line and say, I'm done.
And it's when you get
and they are just, sorry?
It's when you get to thinking also that you deserve that treatment, which is even worse. You deserve to be treated that way.
Super active on here. I want to get to some of her content, her comments here. She says, we're so glad that we're doing this because, people really need to be more aware of it. And you're right. There's not, I study people who are in my space in this business all the time. And this is not something that's being talked about, like it's the verbiage out there is catch them and keep them, how to trick your ex into wanting you back, 59 scripts that are going to make a man's heart melt, all this bullshit that, guys, regardless of all these tricks and, tactics and all this stuff, if you don't work on yourself, you're never going to attract a good person in your, and I know what's a statement. Nobody, but the thing is, on the tab with your order to fix the relationship you have with others, plain and simple.
Absolutely.
And and especially with today's world, as we get into like a higher level of consciousness, there's these things out there with she says, Angela says, I quit dating due to abusive men and have been single for 4 years. The thing is that these days we're throwing out these words like manifesting and affirmations and this and this and this and this and this. And we think that just by stating these comments or, whatever, it's going to change it. And what I see, especially in my world, is so many people get so stuck in their spirituality that they think that, oh, I'm just going to say this and the universe is going to give this back to me. But guys, there's always a level of action and intent. And when you combine your spirituality with your personal growth and being able to heal and see what's being revealed, being self-aware enough to see what's being revealed, is when and only when you can change your situation.
Absolutely. Body, mind, and soul.
I mean, it's just how it is. And we say this not to be like, again, not to bash on women, of course, who've been in this situation, because I was in this situation for such a very long time, and such a very long time. And me having 2 daughters myself, it's very important to understand these concepts, because the last thing on the planet I want is for my daughters to go through the same thing that I went through. And one of the very proudest. It always gets me teary-eyed. I get teary-eyed every time I say this, because it meant so much to me. When my daughter, she was going out for her sorority at college. I don't know why I'm getting so teary-eyed. I think we're just opening up so much today. But my daughter was looking for a sorority at college, and she was trying to choose between two. And she knew which one, like she's so determined. For a year and a half, she studied this sorority on how to get into it. And then when she had the choice of two, she was like, oh my gosh, I really want this one, but I really like this other one. And, you know, she's like, Mom, I don't know how to choose. But she's like, the reason why I chose this one and I really like this one is because their philanthropy is called Building Strong Women. And when we were talking, I was telling them all about you and how strong you were and what you've been through. And everybody was so excited, and they can't wait for you to go speak at the sorority. And they're so excited to meet you. And the whole time I was just sitting there trying to hold back tears, because for me, it was such a realization. It's like, oh my gosh, where all this time I held on to all this guilt and shame that I put my kids through this situation. The only thing my daughter saw was the strength. That's all she saw. And at that moment, I was able to forgive myself.
Right. And lots of people say that. You're thinking one thing, and they're seeing how you pulled yourself up and you got us out and you made a better life for us. That's what they're focusing on. Mm-hmm. We're focusing on the negative, and they're focusing on the positive.
Yeah. It was one of the most magical moments of my entire life. Like, one of the most magical moments. Like, I can't even, like, it was just amazing. And what's so beautiful about that is, guys, you don't have to be stuck in that situation. You really can build a beautiful life for yourself. You know, I had my daughters, I was 14 and 16 years old. And you guys know I was in a very shitty situation while I was raising them. But I went to high school. I graduated from high school. I graduated from college. And now I've got two beautiful daughters who are both in college that I pay for. You know, my youngest daughter, thank God, got an academic scholarship. Hallelujah. But my oldest daughter, you know, she only got like a $5,000 scholarship, and they're both at major universities. My youngest daughter is going to school. She wants to go to law school. My oldest daughter wants to do like social media communications and marketing. And I created that because I chose not to be stuck in that. And I chose to rise above my lineage, and I chose to create a better life for myself and for my children. But it was a choice that was very conscious and very intentional, and anybody on the planet can do that.
Right. And it's not always easy. It takes a lot of effort, but it helps if you can find someone to confide in, someone to give you some support. It's really difficult just to do on your own, but if you can find someone to support you, there are organizations all over. You just have to look for them. And oftentimes you can't just walk out the door. It's not always safe. And leaving a domestic abuse situation, when you leave, that's like the most dangerous time. So it's not like you can just walk out, pack your things and leave. Not necessarily. My sister tried to do that, and she didn't survive. Lots of people try to do it, and they don't survive. So you have to plan carefully. You have to talk to someone, and maybe you have to do it a little bit at a time. But see that there's light at the tunnel.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, because that's a story that I haven't even spoken out about, was that there was that 15 years of abuse, but that 2 months after I got that restraining order served on him to actually when he actually was gone for good was the most trying and difficult period of my entire freaking life. And you're right, I did do it gradually. There was some things that we had that was in joint names. So like I had a car that was in both of our names. So I traded that car in and bought a car and put it in my own name. Our cell phones were joint, and I went and I broke out and I got my own cell phone. And it was so funny too, because I remember even being like, I don't even want to do that. I don't want to give up my number. Like, you know, now looking back, why was I so attached to that stupid number? You know, I could have done that earlier because I was going through my phone records, but I did it, you know? And, before he left, or like when I got the restraining order before he left, I put him in jail 3 times, and he suffocated me. He choked me out. He, you know, showed up always unexpected. And then the last time I sent him to jail, the prosecutor calls me and says, I am so, like, she was so frustrated. Like, I'll never forget this. This woman was an angel from God. I'm not even kidding, but she's like, Mandy, I am so sick and tired of seeing him in my office. Like, I'm done. I'm throwing everything at him. He's going to jail straight for 6 months, no bail, no parole, no nothing. Like, I'm so sick and tired of seeing him. And I told the prosecutor, I said, look, I said, that's not going to do us and me or him any good. His family is in Washington. We moved here from Washington State. So I said, that's not going to do him any good. Once he gets out, all he's going to do is be bitter and angry and come right back. So I said, what I need you to do is I need you to convince him to go to Washington. She's like, Mandy, legally, I can't do that. I said, well, something out. I said, convince him to go back to Washington. And she's on the phone with me. She goes, ah! And she slams the phone down. I'll never forget that because I was at work when it happened. And 10 minutes later, she called me back and she said, he agreed to go to Washington. I was like, oh my God. And at that moment, you know, and he had 4 days. He had 4 days to go to Washington. 4 days later, he left. He left. And I'll never forget, like, sitting on the couch and then just feeling that, like, relief, like, oh my God, because I sat there on the couch before thinking that he was gone. And then, like, 10 minutes later, he's barging back through the door. And that sense of relief that I had when I sat there and I was like, he's not coming back. Like, this is actually, like, for good. It was amazing. But I went through 2 months of absolute hell in that process.
Yes, it's one of the most dangerous. That's why it has to be planned out carefully, and that's why it's good to be in contact with professionals. And if you have your support group, all of that help, because a lot of times you can't just walk out the door. You don't have that opportunity. And you have children involved, and finances involved, and workplaces, and employers and employees are involved, and it's a complicated situation.
But I also want to say it is super complicated, and I know you said it's not always easy. It's never easy, right? It's never easy. But here's the deal. You have to go into that process and trust the process, because once you do that, you raise your frequency and you tell the universe that you're committed to it, and you will be rewarded. So don't use the excuse of finances. You know, I say that, you know, I was a teenage mom and I put myself through college, and I did it. If I can do it, I can't understand anybody else on the planet using the excuse that they can't do it. Like, yeah, that's one thing my kids get so irritated with me on. My kids are like complaining about stuff, and I'm like, hey, if I could do it. Oh, Mom, you don't understand. I'm like, no, your only job is to be a student, and you're complaining to me that you can't get this work done. You know, I did it while having a job and raising 2 kids. You know, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. Like, plain and freaking simple. But I also want to say this. Once you make the decision to leave, stick to that freaking decision and do not look back. Do not look back, guys. When you make the decision and then we keep on going back into the situation, it's your own damn fault, guys, because you're choosing it over and over and over. Make the decision and stick with it, no matter how much they promise you that they're going to be good this time, no matter how much they promise you they love you, no matter how much they promise you they're going to change. They're not. It's just the fish with the freaking blue light. Right? They're just luring you in to eat you up again. You got to make the decision and stick to it.
Yes, the sooner you can get out of a situation like that, the better.
Yeah. Angel says many women, go back because they don't have anything, or many women from shelters go back because they don't have anything but the clothes on their back. And, there's all like you said, but the reason why that too is because we're so closed off from people that we do not allow the support of other people. Like, even when you're in the situation, like, there's so many people who are reaching out to help you, but you're not open to receive it. And you constantly yeah, go ahead.
And if you don't let people know, and it is difficult and it can be complicated, but if you don't let people know, they can't help you. And I think it's a society issue. I think if more people be aware and stand up and make a difference and speak out, and men would talk to their young boys and talk to their girls and all of this, it's like it takes a village, not just to raise a child, but to handle this issue also. More awareness and prevention.
Exactly. It really does. And so I make a promise and commitment on my end to definitely speak out about it more and connect with people more, and do my part, because the moment changed my life, guys, was the darkest moment of my life. I was contemplating suicide. There was a situation that I'm not gonna tell the story right here in this situation, but I was sitting in the corner of my room while he's beating down the door, calling me a whore and da 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 da, and he's like trying to break down the door, and I'm in the corner of my room throwing myself this pity party, thinking that if he walked through that door, this was going to be the time that he kills me. And I told myself, like, okay, I'm not going to let him kill me. I'm going to take my own life. So I sat there and I contemplated my suicide, and I went through a list of all the people on my planet, my best friend, my sister, my mom, of who I wanted to raise my kids. And then I played out the story of how my kids would end up, if they were to raise them. And at the end of that, I realized that there was nobody on the planet that I wanted to raise my kids more than myself. So I sat there and I literally was like, God, why do you hate me so much? Like, why? And at that moment, I swear to God, this is one of the craziest things that ever happened to me, but right from my solar plexus, from my gut, there was a voice that came from me and said so loudly, because you allowed it. And at that moment, I got a flashback of everything that happened to me over the last 15 years, but I saw it backwards in a different perspective. And at that moment, I was like, oh my God, I did create it. I did create this. I got up and I got my contacts out, and that's when I set my alarm and went to the restraining order. And it was because I realized that I really did allow him to do everything. It wasn't him, it was me. And that was a big wake-up call for me.
Wow. Yeah, that is powerful. And wake-up calls. I've heard so many stories from domestic violence survivors of incidents just like that, or like, why doesn't he just go ahead and kill me and put me out of this misery? Mm-hmm. But I don't want it to sound like we're blaming the victim in any way, because nobody asked to be abused.
No,
nobody asked that type of life. And once somebody's mind is under that much control, it is difficult. So I don't want to say we're blaming the victim at all. But when you get the opportunity, go for it. I mean, baby steps, because it could mean your life. It could mean your child's life. I mean, your children are watching this and saying, is this how life, a relationship is supposed to be?
Yeah.
I just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, and that's very good to point out. And I also want to say too, if you are in that situation currently, reach out to somebody that you trust, that is going to be somebody who's going to be objective, because so many times in our lives we have friends and family members who just want to get their pitchforks out and stuff, but that doesn't really help you or the situation. Oops, it looks like we lost her for a second. We get our pitchforks out, but it's too much steps. So like really having somebody that we trust, that we can at least keep us accountable, and setting like tiny little baby step goals to get us out of the situation is like really super key. And one thing too that things in my life really weren't changing for a while. Or I take that back. Things were changing and I was happier, but I still was just like, why is this happening to me? Like, I didn't understand like why it happened to me. And I was still struggling with things like financially, I was living like paycheck to paycheck and, trying to provide for my kids, and my kids were going through like depression and things like that. And it was really difficult. And I was just like, one time I was just like, well, just why? Like, why did this have to happen to us? Like, why? Like, I was so young. I was just a baby myself, right? These are the things that I constantly told myself. And then a friend of mine said something so beautiful to me. He said, Mandy, everything in life, you are uniquely placed in the situations you are in life. God says, look, Mandy, we need you to go through this situation so you can serve my people. And when he said that, it was like, oh my God. It's like, that's why. Like, I lived through it because I had to go through it. It was some lesson I had to learn, but it wasn't because God didn't like me or God hated me or, I was cursed with this certain situation. It was my journey, and me overcoming the situation was the real story. That was the real story, was me overcoming it and me creating a really beautiful life for myself and for my children, and being able to now share that and help other people. Every single day I help people who feel super stuck in their relationships and something that's been really haunting them their whole lives, and being able to help them transform through that situation and feel more empowered in their life is what I do every single day. And I love my work, and I love that I've been called to do it. I'm so grateful for it. And I wouldn't change it for anything, because I am the person I am today because I went through it. The message I really want to get out is you're not stuck in that situation. You're not stuck there. You can overcome it. It's just part of your story, part of who you are, but it's not your story. It's not your entire story. It's just part of it. It's a small chapter in the book of life. And I really just want to urge those of you who are like just really, really struggling, reach out to somebody. But also, when you are reaching out to somebody, one thing that I really feel super passionate about is reaching out to that's up leveling you. Reach out to somebody who's already gone through the situation. Looks like Marie can't get back on, so I apologize for that, but we're wrapping up anyways. But reach out to somebody who's already walked that path of where you're going. Find a mentor, find somebody who can get you there, because I'm not a huge supporter of like support groups, because what happens is you get into a group where you're just constantly reliving the situation over and over and over, and it keeps you stuck in that part of your life. So you're just constantly hearing people going through the thing, and you've got somebody kind of like mediating the situation, and it feels like support because it's keeping you in that pain. So I really do recommend finding somebody who's been through what you've gone through and is living the life that you want to live, and so they can show you how to walk that same path, because they've already been through all of the roadblocks that you're going to go through on your path of, becoming the new you. So I can't express how important that is. And that's like that with all areas of your life, And so I really wanted to put that out there. And thank you so much, Angel, for being on this entire time and on all your comments. And thank you for the kind words, you know, that you said about me. I really do appreciate that. Because you know, for me, I just really want to, I really just want to spread the word and heal as many people as I can heal on this journey. You know, I posted earlier today, you know, I had such a, in my life, I had some really crappy relationships. I sucked at relationships. I really sucked at voicing my truth. And those are the two things now that I use as my platform to serve other people. It ended up being a real big gift of mine. But I only recognized and realized what that gift was in a really deep, dark shadow. So with that, thank you guys so much. And I really hope that this helps some of you who are going through that situation, or who are trying to get into relationships and have a hard time trusting. There is a way to get to the other side, but it starts with you really, really deep down inside wanting to and committing to it. So thank you guys again so much for tuning in. And yeah, we're going to be definitely doing more of this, because I know it's impactful and I know it's helpful. And Marie was so wonderful and so knowledgeable, and she was able to allow me to see things in a different perspective, you know, because I just lived it through myself. So I really love that. So I'll definitely be getting on with Marie some more. So anyways, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I appreciate you guys so much. Love you so much. And I'll be on with you guys soon. Thank you.